Hello and welcome to the Emerald Arts radio show again. It's Friday. Sorry about the blip last week where Dave was. Couldn't get a proper internet connection. Either that or the German authorities were stopping us broadcasting, one of the two. Anyway, with a little bit of luck, Dave's on the other end of the line. Hello, Dave.
Evening, Alan. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it won't be the first time the Germans have tried to shut me up.
On that subject, right, just quickly, I was watching the TV this evening. You know that program, Have I Got News for You? Where they take, the funny out of news stories. Well, there's a barber shop, a men's hairdresser shop in Ilford, and they put a picture of the North Korean leader, forgot what his name is, and the caption was something like, "We don't do bad haircuts like this," or something. And the actual people from the North Korean embassy actually went round into the shop and told them to take the picture down as it was disrespectful to their leader. And the owner of the shop promptly called the police. So they think that they can tell people in this country what they can do.
Yeah,
and I thought that was quite amazing.
Well, it is, isn't it? Really.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
This is all about him making this statement. Everybody's got to have the same haircut as him, isn't it?
That's right. You've got it.
So I don't know what happens if you've got no hair on your head, mate. If you're bald as a goose.
You have to go and get a wig, I suppose, and super glue it on your head.
Classed as a revolutionary, probably.
Oh dear me! Yeah, as Dave's just typed in Skype, "They'll kill you." Yeah, probably about right.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's just ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over there, because this lad's obviously got a few screws loose, hasn't he?
He definitely has. Anyway, it's Good Friday. It's the
What's
day
good about it?
Well, if you actually, why do they call it Good Friday when that's the day that Jesus got crucified? So anyway, that's what they call it, Good Friday. And I've post that with the guide's influence, it got me to post the relevance of Easter. Has it got any part in our today's society? And and what does Easter mean to us? So I'll throw that one over to you.
Well, does it have any relevance in today's society? Well, Easter was, I think, the very first of the Christian festivals that came after the Council of Nicaea in AD 325, when all the bishops got together to try and get this church thing organised. They kind of said, well, we have to have some kind of a plan because this Christianity business is spreading far and wide. And we need to have some kind of rules and regulations. And so the celebration of Easter was kind of enshrined, if you like, in the statute book at that Council of Nicaea in AD 325. It was also an interesting gathering, if you like, because that's when they decided on the four Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. And if you look back into the history of that, that was kind of just sharing something with the pagans, because they used to worship the four directions. So they kind of said in the Christian church, well, what we'll do is we'll have four Gospels, and that kind of ties us in with you. So you find these little patterns all the way through the early Christian church, if you like. So, for example, a lot of the early preachers were women, but they've disappeared altogether off the scene. But there's still there's still some icons floating around on walls that are depicting women as very high priests or even bishops. So in those early days, it was a much more open church, if you like, than it is today. It's well and truly enshrined in what it was trying to create, or what the leaders of it have tried to create over the years. So when we cast our minds back to that very first Christian festival, it's essentially celebrating the crucifixion of Jesus on the Friday and the resurrection on the Monday or the Sunday. Which one is it, Alan? Sunday, isn't it? Yeah.
Sunday, yes. Sunday.
I was just trying to count my days then. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Well, that's only 2 days from Friday, but he rose on the third day, not the second.
but everybody says Sunday, don't they? Oh,
yeah.
I don't know, unless they count Friday.
Yeah, maybe they count Friday as well.
Count the Friday.
Messed around with the calendars so many times over the years, we don't know whether we're coming and going anyway.
Well,
and Easter's always interesting because it's always tied up with the full moon.
Yeah. Well, that isn't it. It's about the first Sunday after the full moon after the spring equinox, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And that's why it alters between the 21st of March and the 25th of April.
Yeah. So again, it's tied into the natural cycles, which essentially is paganism.
So Dave's just written in Skype that they do count Friday. I thought that's what it was. Okay.
Oh, very good.
Okay, so we've got that right. So, okay. So if you actually think about it, Dave, right, Jesus died and rose back to heaven, and he sacrificed his life on earth so all of us can, I suppose, be saved, live a good life. Now, you could say that hasn't actually happened. Now, is it because the human race wasn't ready at the time? It still isn't ready, really, is it?
No, it's not. It's far from it.
That's right. So, this is going to sound very, what's the word, controversial.
Controversial?
Yeah, but did he waste his time?
Did he waste his time? Well, it's an interesting point. Essentially, when I look at Jesus' life, if you look into the teachings, particularly the teachings of the Gospel of Thomas. Gospel of Thomas is a very interesting book. It's not officially recognized by the church, but the Gospel of Thomas was found in the desert in round about 1950, I think. I can't quite remember the date. But it was discovered by some peasant farmers, and it was in a jar with a lot of other documents, and it's this group of documents is known as the Nag Hammadi Library. And I've always been kind of pushed through that kind of urge in my own heart to get as close as I possibly could to the original teachings of Jesus. What was it he was actually saying to the people in those times? In the first days of his teaching mission that he started when he was about 30 years old. And as I tried to get closer and closer to that, somebody once then gave me this book called Jesus Untouched by the Church, because essentially the Gospel of Thomas was never touched by the church because it wasn't there. And I kind of see this gospel as being hidden in those early times, those very early times, so that it could possibly be discovered later as part of the second coming of Jesus, if you like, the second coming of his teaching, the second coming of his consciousness. And at the beginning of that book, written by Thomas, Jesus' disciple. It says, "These are the hidden logia, or the hidden teachings, which the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus Judas Thomas wrote." Now, those are the first words in the gospel, and it's very interesting because the words "the living Jesus" is not referring to Jesus being alive. It's referring to Jesus being fully illuminated, the living spring within his heart that is illuminating him with the whole of the consciousness of the universe. And it goes on to say, "He who finds the inner meaning of these logia, or these words, will find life independent of death." And what that's referring to, again, is that same living spring opening within the heart. So, right at the beginning of this gospel, Thomas is basically saying, if you keep reading these words will eventually open your heart. And so all Jesus was trying to teach people was how to open the heart, whereby they would become fully enlightened, or certainly enlightened to a fair degree, opening into a place of knowing and truth. And in that process, you begin to see the truth within everything. And so you're stepping beyond the illusion and into the truth. Now, what was the question, Alan? I've forgotten.
the relevance of...
The revelance. The revelation.
Yes,
relevance.
That's it. I can't get my tongue around it in today's society.
Yeah, okay. So you're talking about the relevance of a performance, basically. So on the one hand, we're remembering, or humanity is remembering, the teacher who came and how he died and how he rose again. And to a lot of people, that will be very, very relevant. And when you sent over this week's theme to me, I think it was on Monday. Yes. What is Easter, and what does it mean to us? Well, to me, it doesn't mean an awful lot, to tell you the truth, because I'm so connected with the consciousness of the man that these festivals don't have any meaning for me. And if I wanted to be a bit flippant and say, what did they mean to me when I was a boy? And I went to a Church of England school, so we were always having the religious stuff thrown at us. But the meaning of Easter to me was chocolate eggs.
Yeah.
Chocolate eggs, chocolate rabbits, and chocolate chickens. And it was all about, as kids, that's what you're into, isn't it? That's what you remember. Right. You remember the sweet stuff, yeah? And the sweet stuff is the chocolate.
Well, if you actually, I'm sorry, Dave, if you look at our society now, Christmas and Easter, if you take in what the newspapers, the TV and the radio, commercial radio throw at you, it's not about Jesus, it's not about God, it's about buying new 3-piece suites, doing your DIY, buying expensive presents, going on foreign holidays. It's like you can do it when you're being cute and all these other adverts. But Jesus and God doesn't seem to come into it.
Well, it doesn't. And I don't differentiate between the two either. Because when I read some of the teachings as a kind of meditation and you go very deeply into them, Jesus is actually speaking as if he is God. He's attained that God consciousness and he's speaking from that position without actually telling you he's doing so. And when you can see into the consciousness of the universe at that level, you can see where he is, you can see what he's attained, and you can see how he is trying to actually share that with people. And
you see, listening to what you said about how you see Easter and Christmas, it doesn't have any great meaning for myself. Not that I don't believe in God, I do. I believe in the good that Jesus was trying to do for the world. But you don't actually need a festival to celebrate that. You can celebrate it in every day of your life, can't you?
Yeah, and I do. Even when I was quite young, I would be driving along in my car quite often, just chatting away to Jesus. When I go to bed at night sometimes, I don't get down on my knees and put my hands together and pray. But if I feel a desire to chat away, then I chat away as if he's me mate.
Yeah,
He is that, his consciousness is that close to me all the time. And so, if there's anything troubling going on in life, and let's face it, we quite often don't pray unless we're in trouble. So,
that's
the
true.
problem
That's
with
very true.
the problem with human beings is they play this game of telling lies all the time because they're afraid of being seen, afraid of others seeing what their own truth really is. But the truth is, people frequently don't pray until they've got something to pray for. But where I'm concerned, I chat away quite often. I might be just doing anything at all, and his consciousness pops into my head. I might be washing the dishes, and I'm chatting away. And having that kind of connection is like being in a place of prayer all the time. It's like your door is always open, kind of thing. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So now, different parts of the world, different cultures, have different ways of seeing God. And there are certain societies, i.e. like North Korea, where it's almost like the people aren't allowed to believe in God. They have to believe in the leader. And when you actually look at that situation, it's like people afraid to be who they are. So for a society to allow themselves to be controlled like that, then there's a deficiency somewhere in mankind, isn't there?
Yeah, it's called lack of courage. And we're talking about courage of convictions, and it's easy to speak about these things when you're not on the front line, so to speak. But this Jesus taught his teachings. Basically, his message was his life, so to speak. He didn't have any fear of standing up in front of the authorities and telling them the truth of the situation. When in reality, the authorities, as is still the case today, they're all corrupt.
Yes.
But I mean, it's absolutely bizarre. I mean, chatting away today with a friend of mine, I was just talking about we were talking about the situation of tax in Europe, for example, and how much people have to pay. And people vote these governments into power, and the governments do everything they can to impoverish the people. There isn't a single government that uplifts or empowers the people. And so I can't understand why people are locked into this process of voting for these organisations that just have no meaning for them at all. They're just caught up in the political picture without being able to step back and see the truth of it.
The problem is, Dave, that I understand totally what you're saying, and I do agree with you. But until mankind can find an alternative, there's enough anarchy in the world as it is. I mean, there'd be total anarchy, wouldn't there? If there was nobody to vote
to nail your feet to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what are we actually voting for? That's the question.
Yeah.
If the politicians come and knock on your door and you say to them, what's your policy on putting more money in my pocket rather than taking it out of my pocket? What kind of answers do you think you would get?
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be reading this one.
They're not going to tell you this is all about the relevance of Easter. This.
That's right.
They're not going to tell you about the next 50 new tax laws that they've got planned, are they? That's for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, our government and the American government are very good at dangling the carrot, i.e. national lotteries. There's millions of people do the national lottery, yet they come up and they say, there's going to be 10 millionaires this week. Wow, I've got to have a go at that. There's going to be 10. There's only, 60 million people in the country, but there's 10. So, but
let's get them all hooked on gambling, shall we? Get everybody hooked on gambling.
And as long as it says in little print at the bottom, what is it? Gamble sensibly or something like that, doesn't it? Responsibly.
Oh yeah. Is there any such thing as responsible gambling? It's like saying take heroin but don't overdose on it.
That's right.
Isn't it? Yeah.
That's right.
It's the same thing. It's exactly the same.
I like the comments that Dave has put in Skype to us. He said, "Oh, come on, are you sure? Are you saying that the US government isn't a government by the people for the people anymore?" Well, I think that can apply for the UK government as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay.
In fact, Dave's got an awful lot to say tonight, hasn't he? I've just seen all these sayings, yeah.
That's right.
We ought to get him on the radio.
He ought to have a go at it one of these days, hasn't he?
Yeah. We're going to raise the minimum wage. It says here. Yeah, well, why is there a minimum wage?
Well, I suppose what it comes down to is that there's a lot of people out there who employ people who obviously they want to get away with paying as least as is possible. And,
yeah.
And was that brought about to help the people who haven't got anything? So at least they've got some money to a reasonable amount to take home, or look at it, turn it on its head, and is it the case, well, if that's all you have to pay, perhaps more people only pay that and there's more money for the rich?
Yeah. Speaking of the rich, I've never understood this concept of taxing them. Where does this come from? Let's tax the rich. If that is not some kind of a proposal to inflict poverty on people, I don't know what is. People that have got a lot of money, a lot of those people may well hoard it, I don't know. But if you've actually learned how to make money, and you can create a flow with that money, and you can employ people with that money, that is far better than the government taking it off them and investing it into arms.
Yeah. So now,
or other wasteful processes.
So linking that in to the religious festival, or festival.
So now do we understand now why we have these religious festivals? It's to take our mind off the madness that the government is performing all the time.
Well, you've just basically took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say something very similar to that. Is it just down to another control thing? It
is in certain religions because. It's kind of based on fear, isn't it? You will come and celebrate this thing with us, because otherwise, you'll have to answer to the priests or the bishops or whatever for not turning up. So, we know if we go back to the Spanish Inquisition, that was all about, if you don't believe what we say, we're going to kill you. It's not really changed very much. They just perhaps don't kill you in the same way these days.
Well, you see, you can kill people without actually killing them, without them being dead, can't you?
Yeah, that's right.
You can take their belief in themselves. You can take take people's independence away by them not having enough money. You can't do anything without money, so it takes the independence away. If you've got no money to travel, to buy a ticket, to go on a train, plane, or coach, or put petrol in your car, they're controlling you, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
So
there's one thing they can't take away from anybody, though, and that is the light of Christ when it's in your heart.
Yeah. And I think, Dave, we're virtually on the break, and I think he's going to play Killing You Softly by the Fugees.
All right.
I think that sounds very relevant. You know, so
killing you softly with the lottery.
That's it. Do you want to tell people how they can find you with the Emerald Art before we go to break?
Yeah. I think these guides tonight have got a bit of a facetious streak going.
I think they have.
Just call it any church and you'll find the answer. No, essentially, you can find us on the Emerald Heart blog, which is www.emeraldheartlight.com.
Okay, and if anybody's interested in finding me, they can at calmingthoughts.com. So we'll have a break and we'll be back after this.
Very good.
And welcome back to Emerald Art Radio. I'm Alan Cox. My co-host Dave Ashworth, and we're talking about the relevance of Easter, but not just Easter, I suppose, about Christmas as well, and any other religious festivals from any other faiths that are around the world, and why is it important to us as human beings to celebrate these festivals. And I suppose living in a mainly Christian society, as we do in the UK and in America, I suppose Easter and Christmas are the main two. And as it is Good Friday, what is the relevance of Good Friday and Easter Sunday? So that's what... and somehow we got over onto politics, didn't we, Dave?
It gets in everywhere, doesn't it?
It does. Oh, dear.
I don't think we were really into politics. We were just kind of talking about truth and delusion.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. And how the Christ consciousness actually takes you beyond illusion to the point where you can see the truth. But then, of course, you're still trapped in that illusion because the illusion is pandered to by the whole of the collective consciousness. So, you know, everybody gets up and goes to work and does this and does that and does the other. And it's like that little saying that I mentioned a couple of shows ago. We come in original, you come in original, make sure you don't go out a copy. But,
yes.
But, you know, that's what people do. Because they're so afraid of stepping out of line and being unique and individual. Because what we have seen more and more over this past 20 to 30 years is more expression of individuality. You can see it through all levels of society. So this is the new consciousness coming in, of course, where people have got that courage to be who they came here to be and speak about who they came here to be. So, you know, coming back to Easter, this was what Jesus did. He got this taste of the truth, or the knowing and the truth, from his heart becoming illuminated, and he went out and spoke the truth. Any spiritual teacher will tell you that when their heart reaches a certain point of opening, their whole life becomes a mission just to share the beauty of what they've discovered within themselves. And as the teachings say, you know, the answer is the answer everybody's seeking is at the core of your being. But how many people actually stop and contemplate that on a daily basis and go into either prayer or meditation towards finding that inner truth? And so here was the guy that found the inner truth, and all he tried to do was share that knowledge to the point where everybody who was controlling the game found this was just a little bit too dangerous because he was stirring up too much truth. And there was a great line somebody sent me the other day. I can't remember who it was now. But this line was, the truth shall set you free, but first of all, it won't half piss you off. And it is true, because, you know, when I work with clients or students and I look into their heart and see the real truth and I present it to them, they don't like it. They don't like to see or hear or have anything to do with that truth. But that truth is going to come out one day. And as it comes out, it sets you free, and you're no longer in the bondage of the conscious patterning that you were. And so, you know, coming back to Easter, what are we really celebrating? Well, if you look into the deepest aspects of what we're celebrating this guy who was one of the great people that unlocked consciousness. And he unlocked it within other people to the degree that they actually went into the world and carried on the teachings as well. And I think all of the disciples were actually martyred or put to death. So it just shows how much energy is kind of projected towards keeping the truth hidden. And so Easter's really a celebration of truth. And it's like, okay, if you tell the truth to too many people, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to get nailed up to a piece of wood. And so we've got this image in our world today. I mean, does anybody actually think about this? You've got this image in churches, through Christian churches throughout the world, of a human being nailed to a piece of wood.
Yes.
What message is that giving to children as they're being brought up? Is it not a horrific symbol for this great teacher of truth?
I suppose the significance could be that human beings could bring themselves to commit such an act of horror on, as they saw it, and just another ordinary human being who was trying to say that he was something extra special, and he kind of frightened them, and that's the way they dealt with it. And perhaps by allowing himself to be treated in that way, he was hoping the message would go out, well, you can't treat people like this. But
yeah,
that didn't work.
Well, yeah, I think it did in a certain way. When your consciousness begins to open, you know, you can see the truth of who he was and the statements he was making, and very clearly in some of the latter teachings towards the end of his teaching mission, you can see his irritation with humanity and how he considered that this lot are just never going to go anywhere. They just don't get the message, kind of thing.
Well, when they vote to save Barabbas, a common thief, then that tells you a lot, I suppose, about that, because the people there, they was asked to vote in a sense, but they knew that the hierarchy really wanted Jesus to be killed, and they were frightened of the reprisals. So they chose Barabbas. So people was acting like sheep then, or lemmings, whatever expression you want to use.
Yeah, that's right. And that was the collective consciousness. You know, I've seen this in action, and I've felt the energy of it in things like union meetings, where a powerful person, a person with a strong auric energy, will give out a message, and they'll all follow the rallying cry without thinking about it. They just get caught up in the energy of that process. And, that's what they were doing. They were using that kind of energy to control the people. We want Barabbas. Then, everybody follows that. If somebody stood up and shouted, "We want Jesus," we might have had a different story today.
Yeah, indeed.
Although I doubt it, Alan, because they'd have just found another way to get rid of him. Okay, so consider this. Jesus knew he was going to be betrayed, yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Because he was a man who had his finger on the pulse of knowledge, yeah? He could see the truth within people. So why didn't he do something about that? Why didn't he leave the town? Why didn't he go and hide somewhere or whatever so he couldn't be found? It's fairly easy to walk out of a town in those days into the darkness and drift along to wherever you came to.
Well,
so that's a question people don't consider.
Well, he didn't do that because his sole intention was to make an incredible statement to show that there is another way. And some people realised, and especially when he rose and went back up to heaven, and his teachings carried on with Peter. But Peter himself came to a sticky end in the end as well.
Yeah, they all did.
Yeah, indeed.
So the powers that be had a vested interest in trying to shut down this message of freedom.
Well, one person's freedom is another person's shackles, you can say.
Yeah. Well, you could say that. Yeah. So anyway, he's made his statement, and if he didn't make his statement, we wouldn't have Easter.
True.
So what does that leave us with?
Well, you see, we us human beings, different degrees, most of us believe that, we believe in what we believe. Most people believe in what they believe.
They do, yeah. We're all guilty.
Yeah, of course we are. But if we didn't have anything to believe in, then mankind wouldn't have survived all these thousands of years. Because there'd be no way forward.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just about, yeah.
So what did they believe in before religion came along?
Well, going back, they still believed in gods, didn't they? Not God, but in gods.
They believed in a higher form of consciousness.
Yeah.
Because there was always somebody within the tribe who had experienced that and tried to teach and share from that position. The shaman and the medicine men and the wise women were these people within the small tribal cultures. So even before an organized religion came along, there was always somebody within the group who had a good, strong connection to things beyond the everyday norm. And what most people have lost in the modern world is this connection with nature. The nature spirit consciousness is never going to speak to you if you're not in nature.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, and that's where the wisdom came from, primarily. Yeah.
Have you noticed something? Like yourself, you live right out in the country. You're surrounded by trees. Where I live, I know, as you know, I'm on a main road, but the back of our house, you look at the back, you go upstairs, you can see for miles green fields and what have you. And it seems to be something about when you get, I suppose, if you want to use the expression, linked in to the consciousness, it's almost like you have to have that connection with Mother Nature in one form or another, as much as you're able to. And I suppose when you get wrapped up in everyday life in the sense of getting up, going to work, having to earn money to live. The day-to-day existence can take over from the real truth of our universe, of us.
Yeah. It's very, very easy to be sidetracked into the fears around security and making your living in whatever way, working for a company where you don't make any waves in case they sack you, etc., etc. So coming back to the nature's connection, one of Jesus' teachings was, honour thy mother and thy father. Yeah. Now, for centuries, religion have been teaching that this is honouring your mum and your dad.
Yeah.
And it isn't. What he means in that honour thy mother and thy father, he means honour the mother of all creation, which is the earth mother, and honour the father that illuminates that creation, which is the universe. So what he's actually trying to say to you is, if you don't get connected into the earth mother and into the heavenly father, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to be stuck in the illusion.
Yep. I don't know whether you've heard any news today, but on about following like sheep and what happens to you if you go outside of that. About the surgeon in Coventry Hospital back in 2002, I think it was. He was really concerned about the care of the patients, and he basically did a whistleblowing, and he was persecuted by the other people at the hospital, and after so many, I think it's 4 or 5 years, they sacked him, and he hasn't worked since then, and now he's actually won his case for unfair dismissal, and now they're talking about whether anybody will be prosecuted from it. But there's a guy who actually believed in what he believed in, standing up to be different, and he pays the ultimate price.
That's right, yeah.
So it takes a lot of guts to stand up.
Well, it does. You know, I wrote about this in the book Vision in a very simple way, that those that do have the courage to stand up and speak the truth are always vilified by the collective consciousness because they're in the minority. Now, this is all to do with conscience, the conscience of people. So when this surgeon was being vilified, and I didn't hear the news actually, I only know what you've just told me now, but when this surgeon was being vilified, there will have been a lot of people in there that knew what was going on, and they didn't stand up alongside him. And it's not until people start to stand by others who have the courage to tell the truth, to stand up and tell it as it is, that humanity will change. And it's all because people have the lack of courage to face the truth. It's like, oh, well, I better keep my head down. I might lose my job. And, oh, isn't it terrible what's happening to so-and-so? But I can't say anything. Who's going to listen to me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it comes down to courage. It always comes down to courage. And the courage is an act from the heart. It's an act of truth from the heart. So,
well,
sorry, Alan, you want to speak? Yeah.
No, I was going to say, and if you think about the courage of Jesus, forgetting about him being the Son of God, you can say we're all the Son of God.
We are. And daughters.
It's a collective term, of course.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But to have the courage of his conviction of what he was doing, and remember, he was human, so you'd feel the pain as the same as we do.
Yeah.
And to be able to go through that believing in what he was actually allowing to happen to him,
Yeah.
is quite incredible, really. Quite incredible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Mm. I've felt his kind of desperation at times of how am I going to get my message through? And I can almost feel it in when I reach certain stages of tune, I can feel this absolute exasperation, where he came to the conclusion that the only way anybody's ever going to wake up is if I engineer my own death. And so what you have is a situation where everybody thinks Judas is the bad guy, but Judas was the one that had the courage to help him do what he needed to do. And of course he then couldn't live with himself afterwards.
Yeah. Yes.
And that happened to me only a couple of weeks ago, when one of the teachings I was giving at the time, some of the teachers couldn't see it, and they were kind of arguing against the teaching because they couldn't see it. And then I did get an email from one tonight to say, I can see the teaching now, but I can't feel it yet in my heart because my heart isn't yet developed to the point where I can speak of it from the heart. So I understand it intellectually, but I can't yet feel it until the heart is developed a bit more. And I went into that same place as he did there, and I thought, I can't go forward any further when the other students and the other teachers can't see the teaching.
I'm sorry to cut across you, Dave, but we're virtually out of time again.
Oh, good heavens!
I know, cutting you off in your prime.
I hope you're sending me an Easter egg.
On its way now.
Thanks.
In thoughts.
So we better wind up again, had we, Alan?
We had, yes. So tell everybody how they can find you, Dave.
Yeah. So you can find the Emerald Heart at www.emeraldheartlight.com. And from Alan?
You can get hold of me at www.calmingthoughts.com, and also the new website for paranormalgalaxy.com. Check that one out as well. Dave and myself are involved with that. So with that plug, I'll be back next Thursday. We'll both be back next Friday. So over to you then, Dave.
Yeah, well, it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Good night.
Good night.